All right, hey everybody, and welcome to the Diabetic and Free podcast. And today I'm really excited to be joined by Hanna Boethius. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but anyway, Hanna is a certified nutritional coach, currently living in Zurich, Switzerland, and she's specializes in helping clients who have diabetes for the most part. Hannah's had type 1 diabetes for the majority of her life and is now giving back to the community by helping individuals normalize their blood sugar, people who are out of control, I take it. And all of this is through the low-carb diet. This is one of the reasons that I've been really excited to talk about this with Hannah. I saw some of her work online. I checked out her website and wanted to learn more about her, and so I really am excited to have a chance to talk to her today and get to know a little bit about her and her practice. So thanks for joining me, Hannah.
Well, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Cool. Yeah, so we have a lot to talk about today.
Yes.
And I was able to get a little information from you before, and I'd like to dive a little bit deeper today into some of that and just chat about your journey with diabetes and also your journey with this recent chapter of your life on a low carb kind of approach. So before I do that, first of all, you're in Zurich. How's the weather there?
Looks pretty great today, actually.
Yeah.
Fall has definitely started, and leaves are falling to the ground, but can't do much. Can't escape it.
Cool. You can you still go outside and enjoy a little warmth, or is it getting really cold?
Yeah, no, I mean in the afternoons it's still, decent, but in the mornings and evenings it's getting cold.
Yeah, I hear you. Cool. Well, I was on your website and I wanted to ask a couple things of interest to me, and some of them are not diabetes related. Like you said, you lived in
Great.
5 different countries. What countries did you live in, by the way?
Well, I was born in Sweden. I'm half Swedish, half Finnish. So after a couple months, we moved to Finland,
Okay.
and I lived there for a big chunk of my life. And
Wow.
then my dad got transferred to Switzerland, to Zurich, and I finished high school here. And then I studied in England and had an exchange year in Germany. Went back to England. Came back to Switzerland briefly, moved back to Sweden, and then came back to Switzerland.
Wow, so you were jumping around like hopscotch.
Yeah, well,
Very cool.
Europe,
Right. Let me ask you this: did your Swiss German help you when you were in Germany at all, or was that like
no, it's completely different.
brand new language?
Yeah.
And then you mentioned you traveled a lot. Where's the coolest place you've traveled recently to?
Recently, well, I actually tend to stay within Europe quite a lot, just basically because it's easier,
Right.
less time travel, less, time zones to keep track of. But I gotta say, the coolest place I've ever been to is probably New York.
Oh,
I know
okay.
it's a cliche, but
I wasn't expecting that. That's cool.
I love that city.
Nice. I've only been there. Yeah, I should say I've been there more, but I've only been there once, and I enjoyed it. That's cool. Well, cool. I wanted to get into some of the stuff that you do. Your website, greenbrain.ch. I really like that domain name. But you're a certified nutritional coach, as I mentioned before. How long have you been doing that for?
I've been certified for about 2.5 years,
Okay.
and but I didn't start out with helping diabetics especially.
Right. Okay.
I started out with helping people to lose weight,
Yeah, okay.
but I quickly realized that that wasn't quite where my heart was pounding exactly.
Right.
And so I moved on to concentrating on people with chronic diseases. But then I realized, why beat around the bush? Let's
Right.
really go for what I really care about.
Awesome.
And then I decided a couple of months ago to focus strictly on people with diabetes.
And do you focus only on type 1, type 2? What's your primary focus there?
I'm not very exclusive. I mean, I would never turn anyone down, but I mean, it's been mainly type 1s actually
Gotcha.
that I've
Okay.
helped. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Obviously, that's a big, there's a big difference between the type 1 and type 2s, and
Yeah.
even for me, I'm still learning things about type 2. I really want to learn more, but it's funny when you're in one category, you kind of know that really well. Um, can you tell me like a bit of the give us a little typical profile of one of your clients, or what a typical client looks like, I should say, that comes to you? What are they?
Sure.
What kind of when do they seek you out, and why?
Well, what they've had in common so far is that they're quite, um, I don't want to say desperate, but that's probably the most accurate word to describe it. They've tried everything that they're supposed to do, and
Right.
they've done everything according to the book, and it's still not working. Like they still can't get it right. And of course, I mean, I can help them, but it's not. This is by no means a magic solution. It's not.
Right.
Um, it doesn't make it go away. It doesn't, it just gives you another couple of tools to work with it. But so generally the A1Cs are a little bit elevated, nothing too
Hmm.
crazy. I haven't seen anything
Okay.
too crazy yet. But I think there's a reason for that.
Mm.
And they just need help,
Hmm.
just trying to figure out that last bit that of the puzzle that just doesn't fit.
Right.
And that's when they somehow, by magic, find me.
Right. Right. I like the quote on your website. You say
What
basically,
do I said now?
what is a perfect diabetic anyway? And to me, that's a really I don't know. It's a good way of looking at it. Like you mentioned, there's no real perfect way of dealing with this condition.
No.
And there are some who claim that they have that down, but I think we all do struggle from time to time. But yeah, I mean, it seems though as though you've stumbled upon some pretty impactful tools though um, that maybe do give a bit of a shortcut or a bit of a boost up compared to some of the traditional tools that are out there. And I want
Yeah.
to get into those in a little bit. But before that, I'd like to hear a little bit about kind of your story. Uh, you got diabetes at a pretty young age. What age were you when you
I was
were
2 years old.
diagnosed? So quite young.
Yeah. It was
And
Christmas.
so, oh, okay, well, you Merry Christmas, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, what were you told growing up in terms of like what to eat and, by doctors? I imagine via family members who worked with your doctors. What was your diet like growing up?
Oh, it was the classic. I mean, it was very similar to the rules that are given right now as well. Grains with every meal, carbs with every
Right.
meal, preferably grains, a glass of milk, and a fruit as well. Just,
Right. Okay.
level that out.
Sure.
So that was basically what I was told for 26 years.
Okay. Wow.
Um, and before I realized that that's probably not
Yeah.
the smartest thing. I didn't realize it on my own though, but yeah.
So were you, I remember that when I first was diagnosed that you'd be doing like maybe you'd take a big injection of NPH or something, and then there was a time where that would peak, and then you'd have to have some fruit or something to keep yourself stable. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, back then with those kind of insulins, that's completely viable. It works. I
Right.
mean, otherwise no one would have thought of those guidelines. But today, when we have all this technology and we have the smarter insulins and that peak really quickly and all this
Right.
stuff, I don't see why we are still given the advice of yes, it has to be grains to every meal and you have to eat
Right.
these and
Right.
these carbs, and because I mean it's basically like telling a lactose intolerant person to drink milk.
Right. Right.
We can't process sugar, yet we're told to eat bucket loads of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And that's
It's
where I
it is
think it's a
amazing.
bit, yeah, I question it, yeah, to put it
Well,
mildly.
cool. I mean, you obviously, we talked earlier a little bit that you were questioning a number of things when you were a kid, and you said you started to take over your own self-care at a pretty young age too. How old were you when you started taking care of yourself in terms
Well,
managing?
I started, I mean, from the age of 2 until the age of 10, my parents were basically handling everything about it.
Gotcha.
When I was 10, I finally learned to inject myself. So that was, a freedom thing. I'm like, wow, the world is endless. There's no restrictions. Until I realized that's not
Interesting.
how it works.
I'm like, wait a second. And you
Wait a
start to
second.
realize that there was a penalty for things that you did outside that regimen, maybe.
Exactly, yeah. So I started realizing that, it's not just about,
Mm,
your insulin or what you eat or what you drink or, whatever. But that came a lot later as well. I mean, it's
totally.
nothing that I realized at 10. I'm not that much of a genius, but
And then you had a stage of kind of rebellion for a few years. Can you tell us a little bit
yep,
about that?
yep. Growing up as a teenager and with type 1 diabetes was definitely no dance on roses by any means. And so basically, I started ignoring the
Hmm.
diabetes just because it was not working. I, I just couldn't make it, work at all. Like,
Yeah,
not at all. It was just highs and lows and up and down, and there was
sure.
nothing that I could do that would make me feel better.
Right.
And so I also happened to have probably the worst endo in the world at that time. He was not understanding and he did not see where I was
Gotcha.
coming from. And yeah, no, we had a terrible relationship. And so basically, I ignored it for 2 years,
Gotcha.
more or less,
Yeah.
which resulted in on the day of my high school graduation, or actually the night of my high school graduation, I got taken into ICU because of diabetic ketoacidosis,
Hmm.
and basically was in and out of consciousness for I don't even remember how long, a couple of days.
Right. Right.
Um, this was, of course, terrifying. I mean, I'm lucky to be alive still after that.
Right. Right.
And I mean, it was also my own fault because I
Well,
hadn't
and
taken care of myself.
I mean that's the thing is that it's that difficult aspect of I think being a type 1, especially at a young age, is that there is responsibility that you need
Yeah.
to take, but there's also an immense extra pressure, a huge pressure that falls on a young type 1 or any type 1 really at any age that especially for a teenager they realize like, well, none of my other friends have to deal with this, and even some other family members, and here I am having to deal with this. So yeah, it's like that feeling of it's my fault, and yet at the same time it's hard to also put the blame on
Yeah, of
any one
course.
person.
Yeah. No, of course it is. And I definitely hear that. I mean, you don't want, and that's especially the time in your life you don't want to be special. You want to be exactly like
Exactly.
everyone else. I'm glad that
Totally.
finishes at some point because if I would be like everyone else,
Yeah.
probably wouldn't be happy.
Totally, yeah. And would you, well, for me, this is, I was diagnosed much later than you, so I'm interested in kind of exploring about these childhood things sometimes. But what advice would you give to someone at 15 or 16 who's feeling very frustrated by those ups and downs that you're discussing, and just feeling like out of control?
Um, well, to
Besides the
be,
actual diet itself, I mean,
yeah.
emotionally or.
Um, well, if I could give myself advice at that age, and providing I would have listened,
Yeah.
it's really to, stick with it. It's not gonna go away because you ignore it.
Right.
It's gonna come back and it's gonna bite you even harder than it
Right.
ever has just because you ignored it.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's good. I wonder with as we're gonna get into some of the dietary changes, I wonder, back then if I would have been able to do that. And so I wanted to kind of learn about like how you stumbled upon this low carb diet.
Okay.
You mentioned that it was through some of your coaching training. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, basically 3 years ago, I was studying to become a nutrition coach after, a couple of career changes in
Hmm.
life. And basically, my teacher in this course or in this education, he is very into the whole clean eating, paleo
Right.
sort of field. And he explained to me exactly what happens in the body with carbohydrates, with sugar, with all these things that I've been at that time had been told to eat
Right.
for 26 years.
Totally.
And so to cut a longer story quite short, I started really questioning what the advice was that I had been getting for that long, and how they dared to give me that kind of advice
Right.
when clearly biologically it doesn't work. Like, it's not
Hmm.
even good for a person who can produce insulin to eat too much sugar and carbs. Then why should I, who can't produce any of it,
Right.
eat 60% carbs with every meal?
Yeah, more than a majority. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
And and that's when I started, this is complete BS.
Hmm.
I can't even, you know.
So there's obviously like a bit of, I can even sense a bit of bitterness, and I
Yeah, I
think
was
that's something that
angry.
I,
I was angry,
yeah.
sad and upset and just wanted to, well, yeah, be very mean to people.
I mean, I think that's something that, as many of the people I've known who've gotten or reduced their carbohydrates as diabetics
Mm,
have discovered is that there is a bit of like, why didn't you tell me before?
yeah,
What's going on here?
yeah. No, I
And I
see that
haven't,
too.
yeah, I haven't been able to necessarily rectify that in my mind and come to some. I mean, I think if anything, I'm learning that it's not. Of course, it's not on purpose. It's not intentional to harm, but it's sort of an addiction. Maybe it's an addiction itself that our culture has with carbohydrates, and
Yeah,
the idea even of not having carbohydrates is so painful to someone who's addicted that it almost seems like punishment to take someone off of that, even
yeah.
if it made them feel better. This coach that you learned from, he was not a diabetic, was he?
No, he wasn't. He was just very health conscious.
Interesting. And I
Yeah.
think it's cool that we're finding more and more people that it's really inspired to me when I see people talking about a low carbohydrate diet that
Yeah.
the only reason that they're doing it is to feel better. It's not from a diabetic standpoint.
Yeah. No, no,
Um,
I have to admit, I mean, he really saved my life. If I would
so
have
so
gone on and, because after this huge ICU episode, I mean, I tried and I failed basically
mm,
for 5, 6 more years.
yeah,
I tried and I failed and I tried and I failed and I tried and I failed, following the guidelines that I got from my doctors because, I
sure,
mean, they were supposed to know.
right.
They know better than me, but then I slowly started realizing that
Mm,
actually you're probably your own best doctor and you know your body the best. You know
yeah,
what works for you. And yeah, but no, I'm forever grateful and thankful for anything that pushed me into doing that
that's so cool.
re-education of mine.
So how long did it take you once you started to learn about this to adjust to this diet and this lifestyle?
I started pretty much straight away. Took me about 2 months to realize that this is really worth a try. If nothing else, it's going to be just another fail. Bounced back from about a gazillion of those before. I can do it again, in worst case. So that's how I reasoned myself into trying yet another thing.
Okay.
And so I started, just cutting out the toast in the morning. I started cutting
Mm.
out the big pasta portions, the huge load of potatoes that was supposed to go with everything because
Right.
it's healthy. I mean, potatoes do have a lot of, vitamins and stuff, but
Sure.
in comparison to what it does to your blood sugar,
Right.
you can
To
get those
true.
vitamins from other places,
Hmm.
from
Yeah.
better places. Um, so that's how I started, and I took it pretty much step by step.
Okay.
Um, and so for the past 3 years, I've just taken it step by step by
Cool.
step by step. And yeah, by now I'm probably down on a ketogenic level even, but that's what
Right.
makes me feel good, and that's what makes me or me be able to work with my diabetes
Right.
on
Right.
a better level. Although I do realize that it's not everyone has to go that far. Um,
Right.
it's very individual of how many carbs, even as a diabetic, you can eat and you can
Mm.
consume, and how it affects your blood sugar. And everyone can
Right.
eat different levels of it and different types of it. For example, like I know of diabetics who can drink beer without a problem, and
Hmm.
I mean that's carb heaven, that's
Yeah.
liquid
Right.
bread basically. Um, and I can't. I have two
Mhm.
sips and I skyrocket. So
Right.
it's very individual on like how much you can really consume even as a diabetic.
Yeah. I found that definitely true with especially good beers, the
Yeah.
ones I like. The tasteless ones somehow I do okay with, but
Yeah.
yeah, some of those Belgian beers. Cool. And then would you say that was there any particular thing that was most difficult for you getting onto this that you struggled with and eventually figured out?
Um, I mean, in the beginning, it was basically like a whole new world.
Mm,
Like, uh-oh, what if I can't wait, if I can't have pasta, what do I eat,
right.
That was probably the most challenging part. The rest is just gone,
Sure.
sort of by on its own, and because I gained an interest or actually a passion in this way of eating, and just because seeing how good my results got in comparison.
Did you
But
ever feel
yeah,
like you were?
sorry.
No, go ahead.
That beginning was probably the biggest step that I've taken in this
I was gonna
journey,
ask,
and
did
that's
you ever
why
feel
I
like
want to
you?
help people through that, to get
Yeah.
through that first hurdle of but there's
Right. Right.
nothing left to eat. But you know what?
Totally.
There's a whole
There's a lot.
another truckload of things that you can eat instead, which is a lot better. Tastes
Yeah,
a
I was
lot
gonna
better
ask.
too.
Did you ever feel like you were doing something wrong? I know some people talk about this feeling like they're breaking the rules or breaking the laws
Oh yeah.
at the beginning. And how did you overcome that?
I was powered by first my blood sugar readings to
Okay.
see how much more stable they were. Then my A1C readings going down.
Mhm. Right.
So I was basically justifying my choice with the numbers that I saw,
Gotcha.
because that's the holy grail as a diabetic, is to
Yeah.
get even numbers, lowest possible A1Cs, and all that
Right.
stuff.
Did you ever have any pushback from your doctor by when you were doing this?
When I took those first trembling steps, I had an endo he was wonderful.
Yeah.
I started telling him that, yeah, I started cutting back on carbohydrates. He's like, you know what? I really welcome that. I'm like, why didn't you tell me? He's like, you wouldn't have listened. I'm like, touche.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so there also has to be like a point where you are ready for it
Yeah.
too.
Okay.
Like
That's
you can't
cool.
just you can't just go to someone and say like, hey, you know what you should do? You should, cut carbs because
Yeah.
they're bad for you. If you're not ready for it, you're just gonna be like, this person is crazy and they
Sure.
should be locked up somewhere. I
Right.
mean, that's what I would have said just
Yeah.
5, 6 years ago.
Totally. Yeah, and sometimes I still feel that way when I'm looking at myself in comparison to the rest of our culture. A very carb heavy culture.
Yeah,
But it's cool that you had an endo that was supportive of that
yeah,
and cheered you on as you made that transition.
yeah.
Did you have any effects in other areas in terms of like cholesterol or other numbers that changed in a way that you had to kind of deal with or encounter?
God, no, everything got a lot better than it had been. I mean, I was never
Really?
really in the risk
Right.
sort of zone for cholesterol, but for example,
Hmm.
my blood pressure was sky high
Oh,
at the age of, 25.
right.
That's not okay. I
Yeah,
know it's very, very common with especially type 1 diabetics,
sure.
and that's, it's fine. But, at 25, you're like, should I
Yeah,
really be taking these blood pressure medicines?
right.
This is kind of weird. So I've actually managed to actually minimize
Wow.
my blood pressure medication
That's awesome.
by going low carb and doing all these
Nice.
other lifestyle
Oh,
changes that
that's
I have.
awesome.
Um, and I mean, it's still a bit too high if I just leave it
Uh-huh.
out.
Right.
So it stays for now, but you never know what
Yeah.
happens because this is very like going low carb and doing all these other things that I am is very progressive.
Yeah.
Take a step and then or you take a step and then everything levels out and then
Right.
something happens and you can take another step and everything levels
Totally.
out. It goes a bit step by step as well.
That's a really good point, I think. And for those listening who are either doing this, they're new to this, or they are considering it, is that it doesn't seem for me like it happened in one big step. It did feel that way a little bit at the beginning because it was
Yeah.
going from all the carbs that you're eating to cutting them down. There's a lot that goes into that, and for those of you who may think about doing it, it's definitely something you want to talk to your doctor about in terms of just what to expect, because obviously basal
Mhm.
rates will be affected,
Yes.
things like that you need to be mindful of. But what I have found, like you're saying, is that I took a step for a few months progress, and then I figure something else out, and then I took
Yeah.
another step down and another step a few months later, and it's get progressively in the right direction,
Yeah.
which has been pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's great to hear that's also your experience.
Yeah,
Um,
you
you know,
mentioned
you,
that basal rates and stuff change as well, which is completely true. I mean, I'm taking 1/3 of as in my total insulin amount that I take every day is
wow,
1/3 of my previous basal rate.
wow, that's amazing. That's cool.
Um, and I'm so happy about that because
Really.
I mean, I also, like this whole like clean living and not too
Yeah,
many additives and everything like that. So the less
sure.
artificial stuff, even insulin, that I can put into myself,
Right.
the better I'm doing, the happier I am. Because it also
Nice.
has an effect, on everything. Like before I started the pump and I was still on Lantus, I had this huge knot in my shoulder that just
Hmm.
wouldn't go
Oh,
away.
interesting.
Just wouldn't go away. And when I started the pump a year ago and eliminating Lantus,
Yeah.
within 3 days it disappeared.
Wow.
This huge
Interesting.
knot, like it was actually standing out of my shoulder.
Oh my gosh.
It was
Wow.
such a big muscle knot, and my poor husband had to, massage me like every
Right.
night, and it
Right.
didn't help at all. But in 3 days it was gone. So I don't think,
Interesting.
just because we need it, it's especially good for us.
Right.
And
Right.
that's where I
Exactly.
also, I cringe a little bit when every time I see, someone saying, yeah, but it's just to eat that and, put in more insulin. I'm like, yeah, but
Right.
have you thought about, it could have other implications as well? Yeah.
Yeah, rarely have I met any type 1 who has mastered that,
Yeah.
that sort of fantasy of you can eat whatever you want. And it's interesting to me because it used to be kind of when you and I back in the day, it sounds like there was that regimen approach where you would take a certain number of injections per day at the
Yeah.
same time. You'd eat the same things at the same time. And in a way that was actually somewhat intelligent in a way that eventually it became less of that, where people just said, okay, now you're on a pump, now you can eat whatever you want, have at
Yeah.
it. And that kind of attitude almost fed to me another roller coaster that, whereas I
Yeah.
noticed that when I got from injections and a more regimen kind of timing approach to the pump, there was an improvement in my blood sugars for a little while, and then I started to go back on that roller coaster as I
Yeah.
started to eat whatever I wanted. So it's really interesting combining, like you just mentioned, you're on a pump now and you've seen better
Yeah.
results. combining that with this diet, I imagine you've seen
Absolutely.
even better results even.
Yeah. I could, I mean, while the pump and my CGM that I love very much, they even have names. But while I love that technology very much and it helps me in my everyday life, it has not helped me as much as going
Mm,
low carb and all these other lifestyle things that I have figured out that works a lot better that your doctor is not telling you about.
right. Totally. Yeah, that
Yeah.
totally makes sense. So, you know, what would you what would you say to someone who's interested in this? They don't think you're crazy yet. Well, maybe they think we're a little crazy doing this,
They
but
probably think we're pretty loopy, yeah.
pretty nuts. But I mean, in terms of like this idea that you're gonna have to give up all the good things of life, you're gonna have to give up those delicious, cakes and cookies and those, treats. What would you say is like? What would you say to that person in terms of why should I do this? What's the point? You know?
I actually, I just thought of it and wrote it down.
Good.
I have a bit of a
Nice.
writing project, so
Cool.
I just wrote it down exactly what I would say, and it's just a simple one-liner. Imagine when your doctor tells you to come back in 6 months instead of 3,
Mm,
because you're
yeah.
doing so well on your own. You don't really need their help that much.
Right. Right.
You don't need the advice of, what to do in your roller coaster,
Mm-hmm.
blood sugar readings. Just imagine you can do it on your own. You don't need as much help. You are freer.
Yeah.
You're going to experience things that you don't think you would because you're not going to be as tired. You're not going to feel as depleted. And you don't need outside help as much. How great is that?
Cool.
Yes, you have to
That's
get a
awesome.
bit creative with cooking, but God, I mean, isn't that
Yeah.
a good thing?
And you'll probably be eating healthier food.
Yes,
So,
for sure. I can guarantee that, but
delicious.
I thought that was, a given.
That's awesome. Cool. So you have a writing project. Anything you'd like to say about that and what we should expect?
Well, basically, I'm writing a book um, for type 1 diabetics, and basically, it's 3 parts, and it's basically combining everything that I did to go from the roller coaster and A1Cs of 8, 9, even higher.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even want to
Right.
say how high I went.
We'll mention
To
it. Yeah.
the under sevens,
Nice.
A1Cs, and pretty, most days it's pretty stable. And
That's
the
awesome.
things that I've done and the things that I've discovered that um, that worked for me. And this is definitely no Bible of, this is what you have to do, and if you don't do this and this, you're gonna, fail anyway. Definitely not. This is more of like getting, giving you an idea of what you could do and what could work for you.
Right.
So it's basically more of a idea book for you to realize that, hey, there might be another way. Fine, I might not have to go ketogenic, but maybe if I cut out, the morning toast, or maybe if I, just take half the pasta, or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that could help you or help, the person in question a little bit more. Because I mean, as I said, that is the holy grail, to have
Right.
stable blood sugars or more stable blood sugars, and
Right.
not have to, correct every 3 hours and then eat because you're low and then correct it again because you ate too much, stuff like that.
Sure.
It's You just want stable results that in turn make you feel healthier, that make you feel more confident about your care. And you can go to your endo's office and show your logs and be like, hey, you know what? And
Exactly.
laugh with them rather than having them going like, oh my God,
Right. Right. Exactly. It's cool. It's probably just as a great feeling for them as it is for you. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah, I
awesome.
hope so.
Yeah. It's good to have a good patient.
Yeah.
So this is great. where can people learn more about you, Hanna, and the type of coaching you offer for those who are interested? What's a good place
Oh,
for them to
I
find you?
think probably the best place is my website, which is
Okay.
www.grainbrain.ch. I was before the book, so
Really?
yeah, I was
That's
before
good
the
to
book.
know. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe they took that from you. That's cool.
Although
That's,
it is a very, very good book, and Dr.
I haven't
Perlmutter
checked it out yet.
is has some really, really good points. But yeah, the name was before the
Nice.
book.
Nice. No, this is the first. It's official here. Is the first use of that phrase. Awesome. Do you have a Twitter? Are you on
Yeah,
anything else?
absolutely.
Facebook.
Facebook, GrainBrainCH, Twitter,
Okay.
GrainBrainCH,
Cool.
Instagram, where I have basically my food log, so people can get
Nice.
inspired, I hope, by what I eat. Is also GrainBrainCH. So go
Cool. And
ahead,
those are all on
jump
your
on
website,
board
right?
and follow me.
Cool. Great. All right. Well, we'll link to that in the show notes today. For those of you who are interested, you can check out and learn more about Hanna. Hanna, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks for sharing your story
Oh, you're
and
welcome.
helping us out and enlightening us about the good ways of low carb living. So appreciate it.
Yeah. I thank you so much for having me. It's fantastic.
Great. All right. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah, talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.